Hello everyone, and welcome back to Conspiracy. This week we'll be getting into a deeper subject more akin to the channel's namesake. I'm sure if you clicked on the video, you're already aware of what I'm talking about. The theory is that Osama Bin Laden did not die in 2011, but in fact died in 2001. There's some interesting facts out there, and I was first introduced to this theory in high school from one of my classmates. I think in 2016, 2017, found a Reddit thread about it. And I will link that Reddit thread in the comments below. Before we get into the conspiracies, however, I'm going to go over kind of Osama's early days and histories and another conspiracy about the United States arming Al-Qaeda. But like I said, there's some interesting facts and opinions out there about this, so let's just dive right into it. Osama bin Laden was born on March 10th, 1957 in Saudi Arabia. The bin Laden family was a wealthy family in Saudi Arabia, and unlike most people in the country, wanted for nothing. His dad was a Saudi billionaire and the founder of a construction company called the Saudi Bin Laden Group. In 1974, at the age of 17, he got married in Syria. However, they later separated and she left Afghanistan on September 9th, 2001. Now, if you know anything about United States history, a national tragedy happened in New York just 2 days later. Bin Laden held some very extreme beliefs, such as civilians from what he considered enemy countries, including women and children, were legitimate targets for jihadists to kill. According to a former CIA analyst who led the CIA hunt for Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda was motivated by the belief that US foreign policy had oppressed, killed, or otherwise harmed Muslims in the Middle East. And he works for the CIA, so you know he's trustworthy. A quote from the CIA analyst said, "They hate us for what we do, not who we are," implying that the reason Al-Qaeda disliked the United States was not because of ideological differences, but because of actions that the US had taken. However, there's a point that they did just hate the United States for who they were, and not just solely for actions taken in the Middle East. Bin Laden called upon Americans to convert to Islam and reject the immoral acts of fornication, homosexuality, intoxicants, gambling, and predatory money lending, in a letter that was published in late 2002. He believed that the Islamic world was in crisis, and the complete restoration of Sharia law would be the only way to set things right in the Muslim world. Bin Laden opposed secular governments, as well as Pan-Arabism, socialism, communism, and democracy. These beliefs, often combined with violent jihadist beliefs, is sometimes referred to as Cupism, after it was promoted by Saeed Cup. Osama believed that Afghanistan, which was under the rule of the Taliban, founded and run by Mullah Omar, was the only Islamic country in the Muslim world. Osama dwelt heavily on the need for violent jihad to right what he believed were injustices against Muslims perpetrated by the United States and other non-Muslim countries. He called for the destruction of Israel and called on the United States to withdraw all of its civilians as well as military personnel from the Middle East, as well as every other Islamic country in the world. His viewpoints and method of achieving his goal had led him to be designated as a terrorist by scholars. He was indicted on terrorism charges by law enforcement agencies in Madrid, New York, and Tripoli. In 1997, he condemned the United States for its hypocrisy in not labeling the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki as terrorism. In November of 2001, he maintained that the revenge killing of Americans was justified because he claimed that Islamic law allows believers to attack invaders even when the enemy uses human shields. According to some Islamic scholars, however, the classical position of this belief originally was intended as legal justification for the accidental killings of civilians under very limited circumstances and not as a basis for the intentional targeting of non-combatants. Later, Osama made no mention of this previous justification, but claimed that since the United States is a democracy, all citizens bear responsibility for its government's actions, and as such, civilians are fair targets. Yikes. His overall strategy for achieving his goals against the much larger countries, such as the United States and the USSR, was to lure them into a long war of attrition in Muslim countries. If you look at how long the United States was in the Middle East, I can't say that it didn't work on some level. However, he believed that this would lead to an economic collapse in the enemy countries by bleeding them dry. What he didn't expect was how much the United States already spends on the military. This is super off topic, but I saw a joke not too long ago, and I kind of thought was funny. regardless of your stance on it. It said, if Russia keeps messing around, they're going to find out why the United States can't afford to give its citizens health care. Thought it was kind of funny. In 2004, Al Jazeera broadcast a video of Bin Laden, who spoke about bleeding America to the point of bankruptcy. Bin Laden was wildly anti-Semitic and said that most of the negative events that occurred in the world were the direct result of Jewish actions. If Osama Bin Laden had a Twitter account, he would have tweeted, him and Kanye would have tweeted very similar things. In December of 1998, Bin Laden interviewed with a Pakistani journalist and stated that Operation Desert Fox was proof that Jews control the governments of the United States and United Kingdoms, directing them to kill as many Muslims as they could. In a letter released in 2002, he stated that Jews controlled the civilian media outlets, politics, and economic institutions of the United States. It's claimed that the CIA had ties with Osama bin Laden's group, Al-Qaeda, when it armed the group to fight the USSR during the Soviet-Afghan War. About the same time that the USSR invaded Afghanistan, the United States collaborated with Pakistan to provide several hundred millions of dollars a year in aid of Afghan Mujahideen, fighting the Afghan pro-Soviet government and the Soviet army. Looking at how things are today with Russia and the United States, more things change, the more they stay the same, really. Muslim volunteers from other countries were given part of the money and arms to help them fight, and the most famous of these volunteers was Osama bin Laden. When the war ended, bin Laden organized the Al-Qaeda organization to carry on armed jihad against other countries, primarily the United States. Many have described the attacks as unintended consequences of American aid to the Afghans. However, the United States government and intelligence officials that were involved in the operation have denied this theory, because of course they did. The reason for calling this false is that the aid that was given by the United States was given to the Pakistani government, and then the Pakistani government gave it out to the Afghan Arabs, and the CIA didn't meet directly with the Afghan Arabs, or like the Afghans didn't meet with any like Americans. Just because you didn't give them the weapons and training directly doesn't mean that someone that you did give the weapons and training and money to didn't pass those on, which is pretty much what I would consider the definition of unintended consequences. Well, bin Laden pretty much said the CIA didn't give him weapons or training. That doesn't mean, again, that Al-Qaeda didn't get weapons that originated in the United States for use in the Soviet-Afghan War. While Osama bin Laden had committed and even laid claims to a number of terrorist attacks, his most infamous was the September 11th attacks in the United States. So, Tuesday, September 11th, 2001. I had just a week or so earlier turned 6. I was getting ready for school around 7 a.m. Utah time. My parents turned on the old CRT TV, just a click, bzzz. All the channels had a video of a tower smoking and on fire. I remember my parents talking about whether they were going to send me to school or not. A few minutes after they turned the TV on, I heard my mom go, "Oh my gosh." That was when the second plane hit the towers. The Pentagon was hit at 9:37 a.m. local time, which was 7:37 a.m. my time. There was another flight, United Airlines Flight 93, that was headed towards Washington, D.C. Alerted to the previous attacks, the plane's passengers attempted to regain control of the flight, but the hijackers ultimately crashed the plane in a field in Pennsylvania at 10:03 a.m. local time. Investigators determined that the flight was targeting either the United States Capitol or the White House. Those are the same thing, are they not? Within hours of the attack, suspicion fell onto Al-Qaeda. The US formally responded by launching the War on Terror and invaded Afghanistan to get rid of the Taliban, which had not given in to US demands to expel Al-Qaeda from Afghanistan and extradite its leader, Osama bin Laden. Now that we're in the future, we know how well the War on Terror worked. I mean, it took us 20 years and we replaced the Taliban with the Taliban. Now, there are many conspiracies around like 9/11 being like a false flag, and then like false flags as a whole, and if there's any interest over it, we can go over it someday. But today we're talking about Osama bin Laden and not 9/11. And there actually is something that kind of adds to the point of bin Laden died in 2001 conspiracy. Bin Laden said that he and Al-Qaeda had no involvement in the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Like, that's what he said. He said, we were not involved in the 9/11 terrorist attacks. But then in 2004, he said, God knows it did not cross our minds to attack the towers. But after the situation became unbearable and we witnessed the injustice and tyranny of the American-Israeli alliance against our people in Palestine and Lebanon, I thought about it. And the events that affected me directly were that of 1982 and the events that followed, when America allowed the Israelis to invade Lebanon, helped by the United States Sixth Fleet. As I watched them destroy the towers in Lebanon, it occurred to me to punish the unjust in the same way. To destroy towers in America so it could taste some of what we were tasting and to stop killing our children and women. Leading into the conspiracy that Bin Laden died in 2001, maybe late 2002, there are multiple links and articles reporting on Bin Laden's death, reports of not hearing any new videos or news from him, and even the CIA officially closing the unit that was focused on capturing him in 2005. So like I said, I'm going to link the Reddit post below that I found in like 2016, 2017. It's in the description. It has all the links to what I'm going to talk about. In 2000, reports of Bin Laden dying of kidney disease was released. It was ran by the Chicago Tribune in March of 2000 that an Afghan witness and Western intelligence official say that Bin Laden is suffering from severe kidney and liver failure. It was then picked up by CBS News, with the title of the article being Bin Laden reported to be dying. A lot of these have been removed from the internet, probably a third or a quarter have been removed from the internet, but due to archive in the Wayback Machine, as we all know, the internet is forever. In July of 2001, the South Asia Analysis Group reported that Bin Laden had been undergoing dialysis in a military hospital. In September 2001, PBS Frontline interviewed the former general counsel for the CIA and mentioned reports from 1998 that the DEA found out Bin Laden was undergoing kidney dialysis. They mentioned further that the DEA wanted to poison Bin Laden through the dialysis machine, but the CIA allegedly rejected this due to bans on assassination. In November of 2001, The Guardian reported that French intelligence officials say that Bin Laden was flown to Dubai for kidney treatment in July of 2001, where he also met with several CIA agents and the head of Saudi intelligence. In his first interview since 9/11, he said that his kidneys are alright and denies visiting a hospital in Dubai. In December of 2001, the New York Times reports on high-level murmurings that Bin Laden is dead. That same day, citing a Taliban source, Fox News reports that Bin Laden had died due to an untreated lung complication from kidney disease. About 30 close associates reportedly attended his funeral in the Tora Bora region of Afghanistan. A source said that the United States government and others were in a mad search operation, but will never be able to locate the now dead Bin Laden, buried in an unmarked location. In December 2001, Bin Laden's death video is released. After reports of his funeral, a new video appears of a gaunt, sickly Bin Laden. The London Telegraph reports that the recording was dismissed by the Bush administration yesterday as sick propaganda, possibly designed to mask the fact that the Al-Qaeda leader was already dead. January of 2002. The Guardian reports that the president of Pakistan speculates that Bin Laden is now dead of untreated kidney disease based on video and photographs of a sickly-looking Bin Laden. The Telegraph reported that Bin Laden was so heavily surrounded that he would not be able to escape to attain kidney dialysis. In January of 2002 still, based on analysis of video and photo of Bin Laden in December 2001, CNN's Dr. Sanjay Gupta, who was on the Joe Rogan podcast semi-recently, said that Bin Laden seems to be having renal failure. In March of 2002, the BBC reported on an interview with Bin Laden's wife, who speaks of Bin Laden in the past tense, notes his failing kidneys and use of medications. She says that she has not seen him since September of 2001, but hopes that he's still alive. In March and April of 2002, US officials downplayed the threat of Bin Laden, and Rumsfeld said that the Bin Laden threat had been neutralized. President Bush also said that, quote, "We haven't heard from Bin Laden in a long time. I don't know where he is really. I don't spend that much time on him, to be honest with you." In July 2002, the FBI chief says that Bin Laden is most likely dead, and they have heard nothing from him since December 2001. And in a convenient release, Bin Laden's followers, Al-Qaeda, said that Bin Laden would not make more video statements until his group launches another attack on the United States. Still in July of 2002, CNN reports that Bin Laden's close bodyguards were captured in February, but not Bin Laden. The quote is, quote, Some high-level US officials are already convinced by such evidence that Bin Laden, who has not been seen or heard from in months, is dead. Further, in July of 2002, intelligence officials confirmed Bin Laden is dead. Bin Laden's will was released in October of 2002, and the DC-based news, The World Tribune, cites Israeli intelligence sources and reports that the US and Israel have concluded that Bin Laden died in Afghanistan in December 2001. They also note that Bin Laden's heir has been chosen. The president of Afghanistan also concludes that Bin Laden is probably dead, saying, quote, "The more we don't hear from him and the more time that passes, there is a likelihood that he is probably either dead or seriously wounded somewhere." In October of 2002, CNN reports that the US has obtained Bin Laden's will, which is dated December 14th, 2001. That lines up with that sick video of him where he looked very sick and old and dying. CNN also reports there's been no evidence of Bin Laden since December of 2001. In 2004, the LA Times again quotes Rumsfeld as saying, quote, "We've not seen Bin Laden on a video since 2001, which is true. In 2006, the New York Times reports that the CIA had closed the unit focused on capturing Bin Laden, and they closed it in 2005. Later that same year, the United States and Pakistani officials say that they have not received any information about Bin Laden in years. No tips from informants, no snippets from electrical intercepts, no points on any satellite image. The article rehashes the 2001 video of Bin Laden as the most recent evidence of Bin Laden's existence. Also, look at these two pictures. According to US intelligence and intelligence around the world, these are both Bin Laden. Look at the nose. Look at the eyebrows. Look at the beard. They're all very different. With all this information and mainstream media reports, what do you think? As I said, links in the description that'll have everything that I just talked about. The question that would be next would be why, right? If Bin Laden did die in 2001, why cover it up and continue the war on terror until a disastrous pullout 2 decades later? I'm not entirely sure what the point of the cover-up is. If there is a cover-up, could be like a cover-up by Al-Qaeda, maybe. It's suspicious to say the least. He was thrown over a boat at sea after he passed. No funeral, not a lot of pictures, no official pictures released. I mean, when Saddam Hussein died, there were pictures of his body hanging and confirmation and tons of pictures of him, right? But no pictures being officially released. Why is it being hidden? Why is all this information about Osama Bin Laden's death being hidden? Does the government not want us looking at the picture of the dead body and being like,
"Wait a minute! Who are you?"
Let me know your thoughts in the comments. At the very least, it's a thinker, head scratcher, knee slapper, and something interesting to learn about on whatever day you decide to watch this. Hopefully it's like a cozy afternoon, rain or snow or something's happening. Sit back with some popcorn, watch the video. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to hit that like button if you liked the video. Remember to subscribe or share with your friends. A combination of both would be great, but I appreciate you just watching. Thank you guys so much again. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I'll catch you in the next one.